Welcome back to Insects for Fun, and sorry for the 2-week delay. I was really busy preparing for my move back to the States and applying for jobs, etc., but I'm back, and today we're talking about one of the most universally hated insects on the planet. An insect so small, you literally can't see it. And yet somehow, its bite feels completely out of proportion to its size. Today's episode is about No-See-Ums. And I promise by the end of this, you'll have a whole new complicated relationship with the thing that ruined your last beach vacation. Okay, so what are these things? No-See-Ums belong to the family Ceratopogonidae, which are true flies in the order Diptera, same order as houseflies, horseflies, and mosquitoes. They're commonly known as biting midges, and depending on where you live, you might also know them as punkies, sandflies, biting gnats, or in Florida and Alabama, they apparently call them 5-0s because they tend to bite around 5 p.m. And in Canada, they're called moose flies. Yeah, Canada really said, let's just name it after the biggest animal we've got. The name No-See-Um first appeared in written English around 1842. And is thought to be based on words as supposedly spoken by indigenous Americans. It's probably the most accurate possible name for something that bites you and you can't see it. The family Ceratopogonidae contains over 5,000 described species spread across more than 60 genera, found on every continent except Antarctica and the Arctic. The most important genus for our purposes today is Culicoides, which contains over 1,000 species worldwide and is the genus responsible for the majority of biting and disease transmission. In North America alone, there are around 170 species of Culicoides, with about 50 just in Florida. Florida really does have everything. Now we're going to talk about size because this is honestly the most important thing to understand about No-See-Ums. These flies are generally between 1 and 3 millimeters long. That's 1/25th to 1/8 of an inch for my imperial listeners. And some species are less than 1 millimeter. To put that in perspective, standard window screens have gaps large enough for No-See-Ums to pass straight through. Like, they're not even there. You need a specially rated 20 by 20 mesh to actually stop them, which most homes don't have. Their wings have dense hairs and distinctive pigmentation patterns, actually so distinctive that entomologists use wing patterns to identify species. Under a microscope, they're kind of beautiful in a very unsettling way. I'll try to get some pictures up on the Instagram when I have time. Under magnification, they look like little fuzzy goblins with stained glass wings. It's pretty cool. So how does something this small bite you hard enough that you notice? The same basic mechanism as horseflies and deerflies. Females use cutting mouthparts with toothed mandibles to slice through skin and create a small wound. Then they lap up the blood pooling at the surface. And yes, it is only the females that bite, which is a reoccurring theme in the world of biting flies. The bite itself causes a burning or stinging sensation that many people describe as being way worse than a mosquito bite, despite the insect being a fraction of the size. Part of this is because their saliva contains proteins your body reacts to by producing histamines. For people who are hypersensitive, the itch can actually last 2 to 3 days. From a bug you couldn't see, that's pretty disrespectful. No-See-Ums are most active at dawn and dusk and tend to swarm, meaning you're not getting bitten once, you're getting bitten by dozens simultaneously, and you won't know until you look down and see the welts. But enough about the bites, let's actually meet the family by doing a taxonomic deep dive. The scientific name, Ceratopogonidae, comes from Greek, ceros meaning horn, and pogon meaning beard, referring to the feathery antennae seen on males. So the family name literally translates to something like horn-bearded flies, which is a lot more dignified than tiny invisible menace. Now within the family, the genus Culicoides is the rock star of the group. It's the most studied, most widespread, and responsible for the most grief to both humans and livestock. Other biting genera include Leptoconops in the subtropics and tropics, and Forcipomia, which you'll hear a lot more about in the chocolate section. Spoilers. The oldest known fossil in this family is Archaeostraconops besti, dating back around 142 million years to the Barasian stage of the early Cretaceous, which means No-See-Ums were biting dinosaurs, and that actually explains a lot about why they're so good at it. No-See-Ums are holometabolists, meaning they go through complete metamorphosis. 4 stages: egg, larva, pupa, adult. It's the same deal as beetles and butterflies. Females lay eggs in batches up to 450 eggs per batch, and some species can produce up to 7 batches in a lifetime. Now that is a deeply alarming number of eggs. But the eggs are tiny, so I guess that makes sense. Most of them are about 0.25 millimeters, and they come in banana or sausage shapes, depending on the species. Which is a sentence I did not expect to speak today. They're white when first laid, but turn brown or black as they develop. And they cannot dry out or they'll die. Larvae are aquatic or semi-aquatic, living in wet mud, moist soil, salt marshes, stream edges, and even water-filled tree holes. They go through 4 larval instars and look like tiny pale worms, around 2 to 5 millimeters or roughly 1/12 of an inch. Depending on species and environmental conditions, the whole larval stage can take anywhere from a couple of weeks to nearly a year. The pupa, though, is even cooler. It has these little respiratory horns on its head that act like snorkels, so the pupa can just kind of sit below the water surface and still breathe. Nature really does figure everything out. The full life cycle from egg to adult can take as little as 2 to 6 weeks in warm conditions, or again up to a full year in cooler climates. But the adults generally only live a few weeks in the wild. So, if there's one thing No-See-Ums need, it's moisture. Their breeding habitats include salt marshes, mangrove swamps, mud flats, river edges, ponds, and any patch of damp organic material, decaying leaves, wet soil, even the mud around livestock operations. If you've ever been obliterated by biting insects at a coastal beach, a lake shore, or a camping spot near a bog, you've probably experienced No-See-Um territory. They don't travel far from their breeding sites either. Most species stay within a few hundred meters of where they hatched, though some can travel up to a kilometer or 0.6 miles in search of a blood meal. Wind can also push them, and that can extend their range, which is why you can sometimes get really destroyed by these seemingly out of nowhere. Their range is global, from tropical rainforests to temperate coastlines, but Florida is particularly infamous for them, as well as coastal Maine, the Gulf Coast, and surprisingly, Scotland and Ireland. The Caribbean, that's, well, not so surprising because, again, they do best in subtropical to tropical weather. Basically, any tropical or subtropical beach anywhere in the world can be territory for No-See-Ums. All right, now we're going to get to the part of the episode I've been waiting to talk about. You know chocolate. You love chocolate. Well, chocolate comes from cacao trees, Theobroma cacao. And Theobroma literally means food of the gods, by the way, in Latin, which I think is pretty fair for most people. Cacao trees produce small, delicate flowers, and these flowers need to be pollinated to produce the pods that contain cacao beans. Here's the problem. Cacao flowers are tiny, like absurdly small. Bees are too big, butterflies are too big. Most insects that normally do pollination work are just straight up too large to access the reproductive structures inside cacao flowers. And cacao trees are self-incompatible, by the way, which means they can't pollinate themselves. They need pollen from a completely different tree to set fruit. Enter No-See-Ums. specifically the genus Corsipomia, the so-called, quote, chocolate midges, unquote. These tiny flies are perfectly sized to crawl inside cacao flowers and transfer pollen between trees. They are, as far as we currently know, the primary pollinators of cacao. A 2025 study from Oxford University confirmed Ceratopagonidae midges as the most widely recognized and best studied cacao pollinators. Now, here's where it gets a little scary. In cultivated cacao farms, trees are often planted in cleared land with less shade and less leaf litter. No-See-Um larvae need moist, shaded, decaying organic matter to develop in. When you remove the forest to grow more cacao, you destroy the habitat of the very insect that pollinates it. The average pollination rate on cultivated cacao farms is around 0.3%. That's pretty bad. Without these midges, the cacao industry, an $80 billion per year global market, would essentially collapse. So the next time a no-see-um bites you at the beach, just remember a close cousin of that exact insect is out there making sure your Halloween candy exists. Complicated feelings, I know. And here's where things get a little worse. Like most biting flies, no-see-ums are vectors for some nasty pathogens, though the risk to humans varies a lot by geography. In the United States, no-see-ums are not known to transmit diseases directly to humans. They're a nuisance pest, full stop. However, they are major vectors of blue tongue virus in sheep and cattle, which is a serious disease that causes swelling, tongue discoloration, hoof inflammation, and can be fatal. Blue tongue actually causes an estimated $3 billion in annual global losses to the livestock industry. The primary vector in the US is Culicoides sonorensis. These midges can also transmit epizootic hemorrhagic disease in deer. If you've ever heard of deer dying mysteriously near water sources in late summer, that's often EHD transmitted by biting midges. In Central and South America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and parts of the Caribbean, biting midges transmit Mancinella, a group of filarial worms that cause a condition called mancinellosis, which basically produces skin lesions, dermatitis, and mild fever. Now, these midges more recently can also transmit the Oripochi virus, which can cause fever, headache, and in rare cases, neurological complications. So, if you're traveling in tropical areas, the same precautions you take for mosquitoes apply for midges as well. Okay, before we wrap up this episode, I want to just go over some cool facts and weird details. Some no-see-ums actually eat mosquitoes. Yeah, so larvae of species in the genus Besia have been documented preying on mosquito larvae in the wild. So there is a tiny gremlin fly out there hunting the thing you hate most. Make of that what you will. Also, they can detect you in multiple ways. Like mosquitoes, no-see-ums use CO2, body heat, and movement to find hosts. They're also attracted to dark colors over light ones. It's the same principle as horseflies. Wind is your best friend. No-see-ums are very weak flyers. Any consistent breeze above about 10 kilometers an hour or 6 miles per hour makes it very hard for them to land. This is why the biting gets so bad at dawn and dusk, because this is when wind usually drops, and why sitting by a fan on a screen porch might actually make a real big difference for you. Okay, last cool fact. Some species bite other insects. Not all ceratopagonids go after vertebrate blood. Some species bite other flies, like mosquitoes and even dragonflies, latching onto them mid-flight to feed. And that is gonna do it for this episode of Insects for Fun. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed, and make sure to drop a comment on Spotify about what your favorite fact was. And if you haven't already, please rate the show 5 stars on whatever platform you listen. It's super, super helpful. And of course, if you have an idea or some kind of topic that you would like me to cover, which I have not yet, you can definitely hit me up on IG at insectsforfun or shoot an email at insectsfordummies@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and you'll catch another episode next week.